Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Claiming that nothing substantial has occurred is far from equating to nothing happened, as my wife so casually puts it. The well-worn saying about the grass not always being greener on the other side feels painfully apt in this situation. Without seeking my approval, my wife decided to go on a date. I locked the house, and now our marriage feels like a shell of its former self. I'm at a complete loss on how to even begin unpacking this. First, I'm heartbroken beyond words. Second, I'm not convinced that writing about it will bring me any clarity. But here I am, trying anyway. Yesterday, Emma, referring to her as my wife now feels bitterly ironic, sat me down to announce she had plans for a date. I'm 33, she's 34, and we've been married for 6 years. We had mutually decided not to have children, focusing instead on crafting a fulfilling life together as a couple. Yet, a few months back, she started voicing dissatisfaction with the monotony of our life, hinting that having children might have brought more excitement. I assured her we could revisit the topic if that was something she truly wanted. There was still time to make such a life-altering decision. Almost immediately, though, she dismissed the idea, chalking it up to a fleeting midlife crisis. I thought nothing of it and let the matter drop. But yesterday, she blindsided me with something far more shocking. Out of nowhere, she told me she was going on a date with a coworker. A date. At first, I genuinely thought she was joking, some kind of dark, ill-timed prank. I even laughed nervously and said, "Nice one. You got me." Her expression, cold and unflinching, quickly wiped away any thoughts of humor. "No," she said plainly, "I'm serious." My brain refused to process her words. Who would ever anticipate their spouse calmly declaring their intention to go on a date with someone else, as if it were the most natural thing in the world? For a full 10 minutes, I genuinely thought she had to be messing with me. When I finally found the words to respond, I asked her why she'd suddenly made this decision. She explained without a hint of remorse that our life had grown too predictable and she wanted to do something exciting. Her solution? A dinner date with her coworker? She brushed off my shock with a casual shrug, labeling it just dinner and not a big deal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She went on to justify her actions, reminding me of her earlier complaints about our monotonous routine and our failed attempts to spice things up. I countered by pointing out the changes we'd made: weekly date nights, planned weekend trips every few months, even trying some of her more unconventional suggestions. Her response was to yell that all our efforts still felt boring and uninspired. Then she began telling me about her coworker, Sylvester, who had confided in her about similar frustrations in his own marriage. Apparently, after numerous discussions, the two of them had come up with this genius idea: to go on a casual date and see if it brought any excitement. I was floored. I asked if she realized how absurd and inappropriate her plan sounded. She dismissed me yet again, reiterating that it was just dinner and insisting I was overreacting. When I pressed her on why she was even calling it a date, she sighed heavily and claimed she was trying to be honest with me and hadn't expected such a dramatic response. Our conversation escalated quickly, turning heated. She eventually cut it short, saying she was running late and needed to get ready. I could barely believe her audacity. "Are you seriously still going?" I asked, dumbfounded. She shot back with an almost mocking tone. "Yes, I'm going, and I'm done discussing this." This wasn't the first time she'd thrown out provocative remarks to rile me up, but this situation was different. It wasn't some lighthearted jab. I sat there in stunned silence as she got dressed for her so-called date. 5 minutes later, she peeked her head out of the room and nonchalantly told me to pretend this conversation never happened. Then, as though everything were perfectly normal, she strolled out in a striking red dress, pausing only to comment on my flushed face and joke about how much fun she was about to have. I tried to calm myself, repeating over and over that it was just dinner and nothing more, but the tightness in my chest wouldn't go away. Unable to sit still, I called a friend and asked him to meet me for a drink. When we met, I hesitated to tell him the full story and instead presented it as a hypothetical scenario. His reaction was maddening. He dismissed the entire thing, saying it sounded like an innocent, casual dinner in a public setting. His nonchalance did nothing to soothe my anxiety. I stayed at the bar, nursing my drink until Emma called and asked me to come home. To my surprise, she was already back, and it wasn't even 9 p.m. A part of me felt an embarrassing surge of relief, hoping it meant nothing had happened between her and her coworker. As pathetic as it sounds, I was genuinely happy she was home. After an exhausting day, I finally made it back home. She darted toward me and wrapped me in a fierce hug, yet my mind was elsewhere. A nagging feeling told me she might be concocting some elaborate story, perhaps just to mess with my head or test my patience. You know how unpredictable women can be. I asked her directly, "What's going on?" She motioned for me to take a seat and launched into an animated explanation. Her words spilled out, brimming with excitement. She described her date as exhilarating, saying it had awakened a part of her she hadn't felt alive in years. She confessed that they were already planning a weekend trip together. My head spun. What was happening? Was I losing my grip on reality? I leapt to my feet, frustration and anger bubbling over. She grabbed my hands, her attempt to soothe me futile. She insisted it was all harmless, a way to reignite the spark in her own life. "Don't you want me to feel like myself again?" she asked. "To be the old Emma, full of life and energy? Just 2 hours with him brought me halfway back to that." She pressed on. "You know I love you. This is only going to make our relationship stronger." My voice shook with disbelief as I shot back. "Let me get this straight. You're planning to sleep with this guy over the weekend, and you think that's somehow going to help our marriage?" Unfazed, she nodded. "Exactly," she said. My self-control slipped further. I demanded to know if they'd already slept together. Fury surged through me, but I held back. She stepped closer, swearing that nothing physical had happened yet, but admitted she was committed to the trip. She claimed it wasn't about love or betrayal. It was about fulfilling a fantasy she had been holding on to. The boldness of her words floored me. She leaned in closer and whispered, "Talking about this makes me so turned on. Do you want to feel it?" That was it. My anger exploded and I shouted, asking why she hadn't already gone through with it if that's what she wanted. She yelled back, saying they were building anticipation for the weekend. Her determination was unrelenting. No matter how much I protested, she was resolute in her decision. I couldn't stand another second in that house. Fueled by anger and alcohol, I left before I did something reckless. I called a friend and crashed on his couch. The next morning I went back home to grab my things for work. She was still in bed, sleeping peacefully, as though nothing had happened. The sight was infuriating. As I got ready, she appeared behind me, slipping her arms around me and whispering, "I love you." I shrugged her off, but she persisted. "I know you're upset, but I also know you love me enough to let me do this. Don't you want me to be happy?" I said nothing. I simply walked out the door, feeling hollow and shattered. The thought of Saturday, her day with him, consumed me. I knew our marriage couldn't survive this. Even if there had been a chance to salvage it, I no longer wanted to. My only desire now was to make her pay for what she had done. Deep down, I sensed this wasn't just about a date. Something more was at play. Determined not to let her walk away unscathed, I started formulating a plan. By Thursday night, I had decided to act. If she wanted to be reckless, she would face the fallout. By Saturday, I would ensure she was left out in the cold, both figuratively and literally. I bought a new lock and scheduled a locksmith for Saturday morning. I also ordered a new nameplate for the house, with only my name on it. That evening, I came home to find her parading around in sheer lingerie. Smirking, she asked, "Don't I look irresistible? I want to look my best for Saturday." I didn't dignify her with a response, though rage simmered inside me. The next day, I skipped work to finalize my preparations. I wasn't interested in saving our relationship anymore. All I wanted was proof of her betrayal so she couldn't spin the story later. Secretly, I began recording her as she continued to defend her actions. "So, you're really going through with this, even knowing how I feel about it?" I asked, pushing for clarity. She traced her fingers over my lips and laughed. "What's the big deal? I love you and this is just a bit of fun. Think of it like you going fishing or playing golf. It's no different." I pressed harder. You're saying you're okay with sleeping with your coworker knowing it'll destroy me? She didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. It's just intimacy. I'm not falling in love and leaving you. I love you, but I want to live life to the fullest and experience everything I've dreamed of. Her words left me disgusted, but I let her keep talking for the sake of the recording. The more she justified her plans, the more I realized how far gone she was. Later, I shared everything with my friend for the first time. I laid it all bare, every painful detail. He was stunned, but supportive. By the end of our conversation, I had made up my mind. I was done with her. I was ready to end the marriage. He referred me to a lawyer who had helped his uncle through a tough divorce. By the time I returned home, my plan was fully in motion. She lay comfortably in bed while I grabbed a blanket and a pillow. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice uncertain. I didn't hesitate to reply sharply. "Why do you even care?" Her gaze lingered on me, searching. "Do you remember the promises we made? The one where we swore never to spend a night apart?" I slammed the pillow down onto the bed, my frustration boiling over. "Oh, we're talking about promises now? Great. How about the one where we vowed to stay loyal to each other, or does that one not count anymore?" She let out a deep sigh, muttering something under her breath about me being unreasonable before turning her back to me. I couldn't bring myself to share a bed with someone whose thoughts wandered to another man while lying beside me. Gathering my things, I moved to the couch. On Friday night, she spent hours getting ready, fussing over her appearance and meticulously packing for her weekend trip. Meanwhile, my afternoon was spent meeting with a divorce attorney to discuss my terms. I presented the audio recordings I had collected, and he advised me to secure additional proof of her whereabouts during the trip, though he believed the recordings alone were substantial. Early Saturday morning, as she showered, I rifled through her packed bag. I swapped out her tube of lubricant with another identical container that I had filled with a spicy concoction of my own making. Knowing her aversion to discomfort, I doubted she'd risk going without it. The thought of the chaos that would ensue later was satisfying. The resort she had chosen was tucked away in the woods, meaning replacing the item would be difficult. Next, I turned to her phone for further evidence. While her messages didn't specify the exact location, they were littered with explicit exchanges detailing how she and her lover planned to finally act on their desires. Although it seemed they hadn't crossed that line yet, the damage to our marriage was already done. Lacking time to take proper screenshots, I snapped photos of the messages with my own phone. If you're wondering how I accessed her device, it was simple. We had always shared our passwords. It's just that, until now, I had never felt compelled to invade her privacy. When she emerged from the shower, I casually asked, "So, where are you headed today?" She smirked, clearly enjoying her little secret. "Why the sudden interest?" she countered. I fired back, "If your boyfriend accidentally strangles you, I'd at least like to know where to collect your body." She laughed, and after some teasing, revealed the name of the resort. I promptly forwarded the information to my lawyer, who assured me he'd confirm their stay. Later, a car horn sounded in the driveway. She wasn't ready yet, but went to the window to signal her ride. "Don't even think about letting him step foot in this house," I warned. "If he does, you'll both leave in pieces." She laughed dismissively and leaned out the window, telling him to wait in the car. Once she left, I wasted no time. I called a locksmith to change all the locks, removed her name from the nameplate by the door, and packed her belongings into garbage bags, which I stored in the backyard. As I stood in front of her now empty closet, the weight of the situation overwhelmed me. I collapsed onto the floor and sobbed like a child for hours. By evening, I faced a choice: wallow in my misery or take control of my life. I opted for the latter. After a long, hot shower, I went out with a friend who had been a pillar of support throughout this ordeal. Now it's Sunday. I began the day with an intense workout at the gym to clear my head. Back at home, I sat down to write this update. Tonight, she's supposed to return, and I'm bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation when she finds herself locked out. Update 2. Emma's much-anticipated weekend didn't deliver the thrill she had expected. She returned earlier than planned, and her demeanor said it all. The excitement she left with was replaced by frustration and anger. Her makeup was smeared, her expression tense, and she trudged up the driveway without so much as a goodbye to her partner, who dropped her off. Approaching the door, she pulled out her key but quickly realized it no longer worked. Confused, she tried a backup set, only to find they were useless as well. I observed the scene from the camera I had installed above the entrance. She threw her bag and wallet to the ground, cursing loudly. Then she began pounding on the door and ringing the bell, shouting, "Are you home? Why isn't the door opening?" I sent her a single text. "Check the nameplate in the backyard." Then I blocked her number. It didn't take long for her to piece things together. Realizing she was locked out and unwelcome, she screamed my name and hammered on the door, demanding to be let in. I called out from an upstairs window, "If you don't leave, I'll send those recordings to your parents and friends." Her face turned ashen. "You recorded me?" she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why are you doing this? I'm freezing out here. Please let me in. It's so cold after that long drive." But I didn't budge. I let her plead as the cold seeped in. She wasn't coming back. Not into this house, and not into my life. Regret and guilt are already devouring me over the decisions I've made. That man ignored my boundaries, forcing himself on me even though I insisted nothing would happen without proper precautions. I was frozen, stunned by the weight of what had happened. When I opened the door to her, she stepped inside, her face clouded with anguish. She reached out to hug me, but I instinctively raised my arm to stop her. She sank onto the couch, collapsing under the weight of her emotions, and began to cry uncontrollably. For a moment, I just stood there, silent and uncertain about how to proceed. Finally, I broke the stillness, asking why she hadn't sought help. The lump in my throat grew as I forced myself to ask the tougher question, "Did he assault you?" Her sobbing intensified before she managed to reply, "Not exactly. He manipulated me, said it wouldn't hurt, but it did. When I told him to stop, he wouldn't." I pressed further, asking if this was an isolated event. Her response floored me. "No, it happened 3 or 4 times. Each time he convinced me to try again." I stared at her, disbelief and anger rising within me. "And you agreed every time?" I asked. She nodded silently. My frustration boiled over and I couldn't hold back. "You're unbelievable. Do you think I'm stupid enough to fall for this? You're not some naive teenager who doesn't know how to make choices. You were at a resort, not imprisoned in his house. Why didn't you just leave?" Her tears turned into hysterical sobs as she pleaded. "The resort was in the middle of a forest. I had no idea how to escape." I countered. "A forest, sure, but it wasn't deserted. There were staff, other guests, anyone who could have helped you. And why didn't you call me if you were so terrified?" She kept crying, unable to offer a coherent answer. Eventually I told her to leave, saying she'd hear from me within the week. She begged me desperately, "Please don't do this. I'm already drowning in guilt over what I've done. You've made your point by refusing to forgive me, but don't destroy me. I swear I'll be a good wife from now on." I didn't waver. "This marriage ended the moment you went on a date behind my back," I replied with icy finality. She tried to defend herself, insisting, "Nothing major happened. He barely even got inside me. You know I need lubricant for anything like that to work." I laughed bitterly. "Good for you," I said, "but that doesn't change a thing. I warned you about the consequences and now they're here." Her sobs redoubled. "I thought our relationship was strong enough to get through this. I love you and I know you love me." My voice was cold as steel. "I did love you. Now I can't stand the sight of you. Leave before I send recordings of our conversations to your parents." Her face turned pale as the realization hit her. "You've been recording this?" she asked, horrified. "Of course," I replied. "I'm not foolish enough to have this conversation without proof." She tried to shift the narrative again, claiming she intended to press charges against Sylvester and needed my support. I laughed in her face. "You'll handle that on your own, just like you'll handle our divorce." She pleaded with me not to abandon her during such a difficult time, but I was done. Opening the door, I said, "You wanted excitement? Well, now you've got it. Enjoy juggling 2 court cases at once. Goodbye." After a drawn-out argument, she finally left. Later, I sent the divorce papers to her office, only to learn that she had already resigned. Left with no alternative, I forwarded the papers to her parents' home. Before they arrived, I decided to visit her parents personally to explain what was happening. They had always treated me with kindness, and I felt they deserved to hear the truth from me first. When I arrived alone, they immediately asked where Emma was. I answered bluntly, telling them we were divorcing and that I didn't know where she had gone. Their concern was evident. I offered a vague explanation. She had gone out with a colleague against my wishes, and I couldn't forgive her. Her mother called Emma on the spot, and she claimed to be staying with her best friend, Olivia, promising to return by the weekend. Knowing Olivia's reputation as Emma's confidant, her mother called to confirm the story. Olivia reassured her that Emma was safe, but deeply upset. Hearing this brought me a strange mix of relief and detachment. As my anger began to subside, I couldn't ignore the small pang of worry for her. Quitting her job and paying such a steep price for her choices didn't mean I could welcome her back. Not now. Not ever. That's all I can say for now. The terms of the divorce are still being finalized, so there's nothing more to discuss. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.